everyone visiting and talking together. I love to see that. Love to be part of that. But I know that you guys have got lunch to get, and so we've got about 35 minutes, and I'm going to fly through this. There is so much that I would love to share with you, and the elders have asked me to give you a kind of overview of what's going on in the work over there, and then we'll bring in some scripture at the end and get some applications from that. But and they want me to go right back to the beginning. So last week I spoke about this. It took me an hour and a half. So we're not going to go an hour and a half. We've got 35 minutes, and I'll give you as much information as I can. And if anyone wants to talk about it at another time, I love to talk about my country, and I love to talk about my Lord and His work in my country. So I will talk to you all day and all night about that anytime you want to get together. And I'm coming back up. I'm going to be in Birmingham tonight, but I'm coming back up because I'm going to be speaking to the kids at the school that you guys oversee. And I'm excited about that. And I will be wearing my kilt then tomorrow. But that's fantastic what you guys are doing with the school. It's just amazing, just brilliant. So anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Scotland. So Scotland is a very secular society. We have about 50% of the people, maybe just under, would call themselves Catholic. And then maybe just over 50% of the country would call themselves Protestant. Church of Scotland. You all would call it Presbyterian. It's the same thing. So I was brought up a Protestant. I do not remember my mum and dad ever worshipping anywhere at any time. But they were Protestant because their mum and dad was Protestant, so therefore I was Protestant. It's almost just like a badge. It means nothing. But I was introduced to the church when I was 10 years old. And try and keep this as short as I can so I can get onto the stuff that's happening just now. But elders have asked me to share a little bit about this. I used to go to an organization called the Boys Brigade, kind of like the Boy Scouts. And one of the deals there was you had to go to a Sunday school somewhere and get your card marked. So that's what I did. I went to the local Church of Scotland just to get my Sunday school card marked. And that was all it meant. And then one Saturday, I had a really bad haircut. It was one Saturday in May. I had just turned 17. Really bad haircut. And as you know, as young guys, I was a very shy young boy and with not many friends. Very, quiet and introverted, kept myself to myself. But the few friends I had were in the Boys Brigade, and I knew they would be at the Church of Scotland that Sunday. And I didn't want them to see this haircut that I had. So I asked my mum. Now, I knew they would see it Monday, but I figured maybe it would have grown some by then and would be presentable. But I asked my mum. I knew there was this church, the Lord's Church, who I didn't know at the time, but they were hiring an elementary school near my house. So I said to my mum, can I go there just this one Sunday? And so I did. She said that was fine. And I went, and there was a guy there called Kurt Sparks, who was a Harding student, and he was over on one of their international campaigns. And so here's me, a young 10-year-old boy, and I got there, and I'm just there to get my card marked, remember. But this college student, he starts to really pay me some attention and made me feel kind of good, kind of special. And I liked that. I didn't have much of that in my life. So I knew they were having a gospel meeting for the rest of that week, and I said to my mum, can I go back to the church? They're having church every night. Well, we'd never heard of such a thing, but they're having church every night. So she said, that's fine. She wasn't against it. So I went to church every night that week so that I could see this guy, Kurt Sparks, and those other Harding students. And they just made an impact on me. Well, about a few weeks later, Harding students have gone back. I'm now going to worship every Sunday because I love being with those people. That's it for me. And knock comes on the door, and there's a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses at the door. I'm up in my room. I lived up in my room. I was that quiet. A couple of Jehovah's Witnesses knock on the door, and my mum says, well, I'm not really interested, but my son started going to church, so why don't you come in? So she takes the Jehovah's Witnesses in and calls me down, and we have a Bible study. And I don't know the difference. So I go to worship that Sunday, and I say to the preacher, Jack, who later became my father-in-law, I say to him, "Hey, I'm having a Bible study. I thought he would be happy." And he knew it wasn't with them. So he says, "You're having a Bible study? Who with?" I said, "I don't know. It's just two guys came at the door." So he says, he looks at me and says, "Can I come?" I says, "Yeah, that'd be great." So he came the next time they were due, and I sat at one end of the table, and they sat at either side, and they asked questions of each other and answered those questions, and that went on for a few weeks, and then we came together on the fourth week, and they didn't show up. So I had a Bible study with Jack. A couple of months later, in fact, a few weeks later, I asked my parents if I could become a Christian. Now, my dad hated religion. He was a Protestant, but he hated religion. Remember, that's just a name. Hated God, hated church, anything to do with it. All right? And so basically, he didn't really want any part of that. When Jack would come for my Bible study, my dad would position himself so that he could see Jack coming up that garden path, and he would go upstairs so that he didn't even have to say hello. All right? So this is not an uncommon attitude towards religion from the people in Scotland. So anyway, they don't want me to become a Christian. They say no for a couple of weeks. Finally, my mum says to my dad, "We're going to have to go and see what he's getting into here." So they come along one Sunday, and they sit at the back, and my dad sits with his arms folded and his eyebrows down. He's just angry even at having to be there. But they recognize you, good people, not for them, but they were fine with me keeping on coming. Still can't become a Christian. And it took for about another 3 or 4 months till December of that year, 1976, that finally, after me keeping on asking, they said, "Okay." And so I was baptized into Christ, 19th of December that year. But then 6 months later, my mum became a Christian. And then a year after that, my dad became a Christian. And then he became an elder in the Lord's church as well. It's amazing how God can change hearts. Nobody else could have. If you had known my dad, nobody else could have done that. It was God. Now working through people, and I get that, but only God, the gospel, can change a heart like that. So I quickly decided I wanted to preach, and long story short, cutting out a whole bunch of stuff, because I know the elders want you to see this video that we've got, and it takes about 13 minutes. So I'm going to just tell you another couple of minutes worth of stuff, and then I'm going to let you see this. Went to Lipscomb for 4 years, graduated from Lipscomb, and we were kind of earmarked. My wife and I were married as soon as we got out of Lipscomb, earmarked to plant the church in Cumbernauld. Now, we're planting in a country that has that kind of attitude. All right? So some of you have been to Europe, maybe been on mission trips or whatever. You know that it is not the kind of place where you can show up with a bag of rice and everyone flocks to the village and they want to hear the gospel. It's not like that. People are doing well. People have a good standard of living. All right? It's a high cost of living, but it's a good standard, and people don't think they need God. So what we have to do is, and this is how we evangelize, we insert ourselves into people's lives. And we began when we planted the church in Cumbernauld by working with the young people. The average age of the Cumbernauld when we got there was 25 years old, of the town, not the church, because there is no church. 55,000 people, average age 25. So we start working with the kids, and through working with the kids, we insert ourselves into their lives. Let me tell you very quickly, just an example of how that works. So we have a young girl coming along to Bible class. Her name's Nicola. And she comes to all our youth events. She comes to youth weekends. She comes to camp. Nothing ever comes of that. She never comes to church. And we never manage to start a Bible study with her. That's one of our aims, is to have a one-on-one Bible study with these young people. Their parents aren't interested, but they love what we're doing with their kids. So we're in their lives. And every time we have a youth event, we're knocking on the door. Mr. and Mrs. Barr, Ian and Karen, no relation, but Ian and Karen, we've got a youth trip coming up. Nicola wants to come. We need you to sign this. We get chatting. We get a bit of banter going. You know what banter is? Right? So just good-natured, back and forth. We're very sarcastic in Scotland. Very sarcastic sense of humour. So we've got all of that going as we build those relationships. No, not for me. I'm not interested. So Nicola stops coming, but in the process, her younger sister, Emma, has started coming. And she comes to all our camps, all our youth events, all our youth weekends, and we managed to start a Bible study with Emma. And we study with her for a few months, but it never comes to anything. She comes to worship maybe a couple of times, even if that, and it never really goes any further. And we're knocking on the door. Hey, Ian and Karen, we're going on a trip. We need you to sign for Emma to come, and we've got a gospel meeting coming up. We'd like you to come. No, it's not for me. I'm not interested. But we're building that relationship. Well, Emma stops studying. Nothing ever comes from it. But in the process, her younger brother David starts to come along to our Bible class in our youth club. And the same thing comes to everything. We start a Bible study with him. David becomes a Christian. And we're knocking on the door. Ian and Karen still aren't interested. They don't even come to his baptism. But we've now been working with this family for 15 to 20 years. About the same time Winchester have been working with us. You know, you don't always get that kind of time when you're talking about someone supporting a mission field. But in a place like Europe, you have to kind of hang in there for a long time to see the results. And Winchester have done that with us, and I can't thank you enough for that. For you to show, you know, that kind of faith in us and stick with us is just, it's what it takes. But you don't always get it, and we love you for that. So Karen and Ian still aren't interested, but Karen's dad becomes ill and ends up in hospital, 45 minutes away in Edinburgh. And they don't drive. So guess who they ask? So we've got them in the car 3 times a week, 45-minute drive over to Edinburgh, captive audience. We can say whatever we like. They can't do a thing about it. We visit with her and her dad, and we joke, and we have a great relationship, and then we give them some private time, and then we take them home. Captive audience, 3 times a week for the next 3 weeks. And they're very appreciative, as you can imagine. So then a couple of weeks later, we have a gospel meeting. And I knock on the door. And Karen's sitting there with 2 of her friends and in our living room with a glass of wine at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we have a little bit of banter and a little bit of joking. And I say, Karen, we got a gospel meeting coming up, and we got a guest speaker, and I'd love for you to come. And this is her reaction with her glass. Fine, I'll come. And I looked at her and her friends laughing. I said, I told you I would get you. I had told her a couple of years before, one of these days I'm going to get you. And I said, I told you I would get you. And she says, yeah. And her friends laughing. I said, I'm going to get you too. That's how we evangelize. We're building those relationships all the time. It takes time. Every single situation, everything we do, we're looking at reaching a soul. We're looking at teaching the gospel. It's all built towards that. Ian and Karen become Christians. Karen's faithful. Ian we're winning him back. He's had a few struggles and he fell away for a little while, but I think we're going to get him back. But that's how we do it. We had one young girl who was just baptized 2 Sundays ago, and she is there because her dad and his brother came to our Bible class 20 years ago. They never became Christians, but she is. And we have so many examples of that in the church, of young people and adults who have come through that youth program, and we've managed to make an impact in the lives of those families, and eternity has been changed because they're Christians now because of it. And so we were growing through that, and I'm going to let the video speak for most of this. We were outgrowing the building that we were in. And it's an absolute crazy story. I can't even tell you all. But basically, long story short, we were able to buy a $4.5 million piece of land that wasn't even for sale. And we managed to buy it for $350,000. I'm converting it for you. 350, less than 10%. There were 5 other offers for that land because eventually, after we asked about it, it came up for sale. 5 other offers, all of them higher than us, and 4 of them ready to pay immediately. And we couldn't pay for another 3 months till we did some checks and also got the money. But they had the money right away, and the bank and the owner, because the bank was involved, still gave it to the Lord's church. I wish I could tell you the whole story, but you'll see something about it in the video. But we have a fantastic congregation. It's growing. We had, so in Europe, in Scotland, 1 or 2 baptisms a year is good. 3 is great. 0 is not unusual. All right? So last year we had 12 baptisms. We had 4, 5, or 6 place membership. We've had another 3 baptisms this year. It is just going so great. God is blessing us so much we can't even keep up. And if you could hear the whole story about how we are where we are today, you would laugh. You would sit and laugh. And I've even had Christians who have said, but how? How? It's the Lord. If you don't know God, this story does not make sense. And watch this video, and if any of you get any questions afterwards, like after today, and please ask me, because I'd love to talk to you about it. But I'll get up for a few minutes after this is played. When God opens doors, it's more than an opportunity. It's a Jericho moment.
Faith in God's faith in us can be intimidating, but the call is to march.
God has opened many doors for us in Cumbernauld, but nothing like this.
Our search for land was finding enough, but God's provision for us was more than we imagined. Prime real estate worth millions was obtained for a tenth of its value.
It sits in the heart of our community and Scotland.
It gives us the opportunity to be the literal city on a hill that cannot be hid.
The rise of secularism has created discordant communities all over the world, and frustration that turns to anger and violence.
It is evident that we live in a broken world.
People are looking for a better community and a better way.
God has already established the way and the community, His church.
We believe that God has placed us in a position to rise to this moment that pushes back against the world's confusion.
I see people in our church family shining the light of Christ in our community in ways that inspire others to come and know Him.
You should hear their stories. We're growing, we're together, we're ready. We are ready for this new chapter for us in His story.
We are so excited for this new chapter to see what God has in mind for us.
I feel like we have to ask ourselves, do we ask Him to answer only our prayers, or do we rise to His vision?
So in December 2017, we went to the lawyer's office and signed a piece of paper that transferred ownership of a piece of land that was worth over $3 million that we had obtained for less than a tenth of that value, and that we're looking to build something on that will be transformative for everyone around us. Who knows what else God has got in mind for us. This land is on the second busiest road in Scotland, and once the building's on it with a sign that says Church of Christ, I don't think there'll be a person in Scotland who won't know that name because of that route that they often have to take when they travel from the big city of Glasgow to everywhere else in Scotland. This is truly transformative of the name of the church.
It's amazing for me to look back to 1984 when we started, or when my father-in-law Jack Strachan started home cottage meetings, Bible studies on a Monday evening in the home of Ronnie and Mary Nielsen. And then as I was studying to preach, was earmarked to begin the work here in earnest and establish a congregation that was worshipping here. And that began in 1986-87 when myself and my co-worker from Cersei, Arkansas established the congregation, and it has been through a lot of things since then. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but God has blessed us the whole time. We have grown consistently, and obviously the enemy's been pushing against that, but we have God and we're winning.
And you know what? And when I do think about the future here in Cumbernauld, I smile because I see that it's bright. We've got plans ahead, and we've got younger ones coming up, and I can think of specific ones in my head, and every time I think of that, I just smile because I know that the future here is bright because God is in control and God is working.
Coming into this church, it's dawned on me and my family that the Holy Spirit actually led us in, because we settled in real quickly, and the depth of love that we've experienced is a pointer to the fact that the Holy Spirit orchestrated this and no one else.
So I love working with the kids because, especially over here, there's very little Christian input in this country. So I think it's really important that the church do that and we get them from such a young age to learn morals and help them have a better life, because there's so many places they're hearing the opposite. So I like how important that is. Our leadership here are very passionate about showing Jesus' love to people, and as soon as you meet them, it's just so obvious that they love you and they want you to come and know God too. And it's just in everything they do, you can see that through it.
I am a single parent, been through my own choosing coming to the church, and I have my son who has just turned 16. He's been brought up in the church, and you know, it doesn't matter your background, where you're from, what colour or race you are, you're always welcome here. Nobody's ever made to feel unwelcome.
I've often said to Adam, I feel like I'm alive when I walk in here. I don't know, there's just an atmosphere and I was one of a family of two, and I always wanted to be one of a big family, and I feel that that's where I am now. As I've started coming here, I feel as I've learned a lot more about Jesus, and my faith is much stronger.
Living in a Christian life, knowing the Word of God, you know what's your future. That's the most important thing of, I think, in a life. And a person that would know actually, you know, just to realize that life after death, there is a future for each person, learning about the church, learning about the truth.
My prayer for the church in the future, and what I would like to think the future in Cumbernauld Church, is the continuity of the church, having the leadership that we have now, of course with Graham and Adam, and you know, having young men and men alike, you know, being under their wings and being trained to just keep the work going.
Cumbernauld Church has impacted me personally, given me a focus, if you like, know that we belong, know we're definitely saved, and it's some place to look forward to being a part of and going to every week.
My favourite part, I guess, is the people and the camaraderie, the close fellowship, and the fact that everybody will do anything, will drop anything to help somebody else in the church very closely.
I know some people have said, like, you need to find stuff outside of church, and I'm like, no, I am absolutely thrilled for my whole life to be revolved around church, because that has given me such a purpose, and I love it.
When I come to this church, I feel excited. I feel like I've come to worship God with my friends and my family. This church has helped me realize that God is more superior than everything in this world.
How I feel when we come to church, I feel comfortable. I feel like I'm really part of the church. That everyone in this church is like family, or close to family as possibly can be.
My hope and prayer for the church is that the church continue to grow. Lately, we've been seeing a lot of growth has been happening, and which means we need our own space. And we've been doing different things with the community. We'll be having like food banks, warm bank, like people come and just have a cup of tea, drink, and just have a chat. We want to be able, for the church to be able to grow.
The future will see that in the next few years, there might not even be enough space for people to sit down where we are now. So as my wife has said, our hope is that we have a bigger space so that people can join us, so that we can both grow in number and also grow spiritually.
This church has impacted on my life through being with ministers and reading and studying in the Lord's book.
Our youngest member in the congregation is just a newborn, lovely little baby, and our oldest member is about to be 100 years old. A little lady who loves God and loves what He's done for her in her long life. I fully believe that every member has a purpose in life, and God has a plan for each and every one of us. And it's being fulfilled. Even as we speak right now, God's plan is working.
If we hadn't found the church, or personally, if I hadn't found the church, I really don't know where I would be just now, because wasn't living the Christian life at the time. So, but since becoming a Christian, my life has changed dramatically. It's just a great feeling to know that I'm safe no matter what happens.
We've often referred to ourselves as the Cumbernauld Church of Christ, and our work is initially and primarily focused on this community of some 55,000 people. But we've become a community of the county. We've become a church of the county. We have people that come from all corners of it and from counties beyond our own, who come here to hear the truth, who want to be part of the vision. And as we continue to grow, we see this building as being a focal point of the work, in a sense that it brings people together who are coming from other places and realize how easy it is to get here. And from them we can then reach into their communities and establish congregations where they live. So I'd like to think that 5, 10, 20 years down the road, what we build here in Cumbernauld can be something that is replicated, at least in terms of the congregation, in a dozen or 2 dozen or even more communities around this area, around this part of Scotland. And we think we've got an impact to make in the lives of literally millions of people who simply hear and see the name Church of Christ because of that location.
My prayer for the church, not only here in Cumbernauld, not only here in Scotland, but across the world, is that we just continue to allow ourselves to be used by the Lord and to be the tools in His hands, so that we can reach the lost and teach those who don't know Him yet, and show Him just what they are missing from their lives and who they are missing from their lives, but also to serve and love one another and help each other to stay faithful. I hope that God can use us to reach this community and this country who need Him so badly. With all of the things that are going on and the way Satan's working, they need to know Jesus. And my prayer is that He can continue to use us to do that. We have been helped by so many people across the world over the years. This congregation wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the faithfulness and the sacrifice and the encouragement of so many people who have held our hands up and stood beside us and stood behind us and kept us going when things became at times so discouraging. And it just feels like we have an obligation not only to our Father who has sacrificed everything, but also to our brethren who have, in believing in Him, have also believed in us and have enabled us to stay the course, to bring us to where we are right now. And I know that they're going to be right behind us to take us forward even further in Him. Hopefully that gives you a little flavour of what's going on in the church there, and lets you see some of our members as well. I wish you could come over, and we had a great time with the group that came over last time, and I wish that everyone could come over and just be a part of that and see what's going on. You would love it. It would do your heart good. And you're all welcome to come, not all at the same time, but I would love for you to come over and be a part of that. God is just blessing us so much right now. We just don't know what He has in store for us. We really believe that there's going to be a turn back to God. I really believe that. I believe it's going to happen here in your country as well. I believe it's already started happening. And in our country, at least, decent people, many of them have no faith at all, are fed up with what's been pushed on our children and in our schools, and the junk that is being brought into their lives from this culture that we're in the middle of, and they're saying enough is enough. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them will turn back to God, and they are already starting to do that. They are realizing that God's way is not only the better way, but the only way and the best way. And that's starting to happen. And I said that to Graham, my co-worker, who you saw about 8 years ago, that I think this was going to happen. I didn't think it would be so fast. But it's happening now, and I believe with this building opportunity that we have, God is putting us in that position to be the hand that's out when these people turn back to him. Let's just look at a couple of scriptures as we finish up and give you something from Scripture regarding this. Go to Genesis chapter 50. You know, I look back at my own life and I look back at the church in Cumbernauld, and I see, right now we see the kind of opportunity that he's given and the land that we've been able to purchase. And as I say, I've only scratched the surface of it with you. If you knew the whole story, you would be blown away. You'd be flabbergasted. It's that ridiculous, all right? But we have a God who does the ridiculous. But even in smaller things, I look back even to, you know, even that bad haircut, you know, even little things that have happened through my life, and I see God's hand all over it. And I didn't see it at the time, but I see it now, and I think about the life of Joseph, and we're going to read verse 20 from Genesis 50 here in a minute. And we know the life of Joseph and how he was his dad's favorite, and he was betrayed by his brothers, and they wanted to kill him, but then they sold him into slavery, and we know how he was betrayed by Potiphar's wife and then ended up in prison. All of that. And we get to the end of Joseph's life, and he's looking back, and he's now in a great position. He's second in command in the country. He's wealthy. He's the prince. He's married to the princess. And in verse 20, when he's talking to his brothers, he says, As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. And I love that word meant. It's actually a Hebrew word that's pronounced koshab. And it literally means to pleat or weave. And so what I get from this verse is that Joseph is saying to his brothers, you were weaving a whole web of evil there. You were weaving stuff and pleating stuff together for bad stuff to happen to me. That's what you intended. And as you were doing it, and God wasn't doing that. God didn't tempt those brothers. God doesn't tempt, remember. So he didn't cause those brothers to hate Joseph or sell him into slavery. That was their own idea. That was Satan's involvement. But as they're weaving all of that, God's reweaving it. I love that picture. Where whatever's going on in life, whatever's happening, whatever we're doing, whatever we're choosing, whatever is being forced upon us in our lives, God is taking those fibers and he's reweaving them into something that will ultimately end in his will being fulfilled and accomplished and his purpose is being achieved. So I want you to think about that in your own lives and look back and remind yourselves, or maybe even notice for the first time, how God has been working in your life. And maybe it's some huge events and huge incidents like we find for Joseph, or maybe it's just something very small where maybe you changed direction. Maybe something happened that caused a domino effect and led you to a place that God wanted you to be. But I want you to try and see God's hand all over your life, and not just in we're in Cumbernauld, we're seeing it in very obvious ways right now, but we have to remind ourselves God's hand's been all over this the whole time. You know, even coming to Lipscomb and meeting the friends that I have now, like Dan and Pam and Pam's brother Andy, and these are guys who have always, when I've come over and told them about the church in Scotland, they've always stepped up and helped us reach our goals, helped us do what we need to do what we want to do. And I see God's hand through all of that, building those relationships in my life, albeit all started with that haircut. Remind yourselves of that, right? But then go to Romans 8, really, really well-known passage. And we're just going to read verse 28 at first, but keep your page open because we're going to read the following verses. Sometimes we read Romans 8:28, and we read it so often it kind of just rolls off the tongue. And certainly I know that I missed something in this. Romans 8, verse 28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. And sometimes I just read that like that. Yeah, everything's going to work out for good. And I miss that he's actually saying all things. Every single thing. When we were up in Skye, the Isle of Skye in Scotland just a few days ago, we got to visit a local weaver. And he was weaving a brand new real roll of material. And we got to have a shot. It was sit on a bike and things going back and forth. And it's just going through all. It was amazing to watch. We got to be part of that. And it makes me think of God. He's reweaving all of these things in our lives, but brethren, it's every single fiber. He doesn't miss anything out. Every single thing in our lives, every moment, every relationship, every decision, every place we go, everything we do, God is working in those things. God is reweaving in those things. It's not just a few highlights. It's not just a few bits and pieces here. It's every single fiber. There's the bell. That means we've only got 20 minutes left. But I want you to notice something else, because sometimes if you're like me, I've read this and I'm thinking, okay, well, something bad's happened in my life, but God's going to bring something good out of it. And whatever's made me uncomfortable, well, I'm going to find some comfort and peace. But I want you to, when God's hand is all over this, and when God is working in your life, and when God is reweaving in your life, and working all of the things, every single thing in your life, to bring out that good, it's not so that you can be a little bit more comfortable. It's not so that some difficult situation can be removed. That's not his ultimate plan. You see, for God, everything is about souls. Everything is about souls. Look on in verse 29, 30. God's working all things together for good. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. And everything that he does in verse 28, everything he's working out for good, for all those who love him, all the ways that he's reweaving in their lives, it's so that we can be justified and glorified with him, and souls can be saved, and we can be at that throne of God forever with Christ. That's what it's all about. If some moments of comfort or some moments of a better situation work out in our lives because of God's working, that's great. That will happen. But ultimately, it's about souls. When I got that bad haircut and went to the church for the first time, for God, that was about souls. When that campaign, Harding student, paid me some attention, he was just giving a kid some attention. For God, that was about souls. Everything leading up to the moment where we can share the gospel with someone. When we're working with those young people, when we're driving people to the hospital, when you're doing all of the same things, when you're speaking to those kids out there, when you're helping your neighbour, when you're talking to someone in you don't have bus stops, but we were at the bus stop in Scotland in public transport. Everything we do is all about souls. You see this building, this plan that we've got, that's just a tool. The building's just a tool. It's all about souls. Think about those passages this week if you can. Have a look. See God's working in your life. See God's hand all over it, reweaving every single thing you do today and tomorrow and the next day when you wake up. Think about that. God is weaving all the time. But every time, ultimately, it's leading towards the salvation of a soul and reaching someone with the gospel. I've went 5 minutes over time. God bless you for giving me that time. I hope you noticed we put subtitles on the video for you. I hope you appreciate that. But you'll see that sometimes on social media. We're sharing this with everybody because we need some help. So we're sharing this with everyone we can. If you see it on social media, click that share button. Share it with everyone you can. We just don't know what doors God's going to open for us. He's weaving. He's weaving all the time. We don't know where. We don't know what it's going to look like. But if you can do that for us, I would really appreciate that. That'd be great. Thank you for your time. Hope I get to visit with some of you afterwards.